broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege. Privilege.
What's happening? It's your boy Chris Cross. This is the TC MMA podcast, and we got a lot to discuss, a lot going on in the world of the UFC. And of course, we'll get into UFC Vegas 113 going down this Saturday night. We'll get into some of those fight picks, some big fights this weekend, and then we got a week off. Time to get caught back up on some future predictions, right? UFC 326 coming, I believe, in March, actually. We got UFC Vegas, we got UFC Houston, UFC Mexico or Mexico City, one or the other. And I just heard today that Brandon Moreno is now facing Loner Kavanaugh, a guy that's 2-1 in the UFC. So that's going to be a big opportunity for him to get back in the win column in front of a big home crowd, right? And I have a question. Is it UFC Mexico or UFC Mexico City? It changes wherever you go. It drives me nuts. And that's why we haven't done any predictions yet. Because if I say UFC Mexico, then they call it Mexico City. And if I say Mexico City, they call it UFC Mexico. So it drives me absolutely bananas. But that's small potatoes, right? Let's jump into some of the UFC news going on today. First and foremost, Khamzat Chimaev is back in the news.
Khamzat Chimaev!
And we haven't talked about him in a little while. You know, he's number one on our do list. He's our favorite fighter and a guy we believe that can beat anybody that he faces, regardless of the division. So I'm not surprised that he's in the Middle East right now, training with Rogan, a heavyweight fighter, and is probably holding his own when he does go against Rogan, I'm sure. But these guys are in the Middle East, and, you know, when you hear Middle East and training, you know, we're almost programmed to think that's going to be a tough place to train, even though it's just another place. So, you know, they're getting some hardcore work in. We got Ramadan just around the corner. So obviously Khamzat's not going to be fighting for a little while. I expect to see him back in May, June, July, somewhere around there. Hopefully get the win and then start looking at the light heavyweight division, and hopefully Alex Pereira is still there at that time. So I'm just glad to see something about Khamzat, and that's our guy. And just glad he's working and training, especially with a heavyweight. So he's only got to cut weight to 185 one more time, and then we'll you know, update you as to how that plays out. But Khamzat will face Nazardine Imavov and then go up to light heavyweight. So more on him in the future. Now, an interesting story coming out, and I totally missed this at UFC 325, but now it's breaking because Carlos Prates was asked a wild question about Garry's wife. If you don't know about Garry's wife, she's constantly in the news. All these theories of her with other people, things of that nature. You know, I don't know how real that stuff is. Her name is Layla. But Carlos Prates was asked a wild question, something along the lines of, are you doing something with Garry's wife? And, you know, and regardless of how the question was phrased, they're just trying to get a comment from Carlos Prates and trying to hype up that fight and make it a terrible situation. But listen, I grew up with a lot of Hispanic friends. They don't play that when it comes to their wives, their mothers, their women. And most cultures don't. I think our culture is a little bit, you know, softer on that stuff. But Carlos Prates shut it down immediately and said, you don't talk about another man's wife. I mean, this is the fight game. When we get in the octagon, we're enemies, of course. And I'm paraphrasing. But in real life, we respect one another. This is a business. And he's not going to talk about another man's wife because that could lead to serious problems in the street, right? People, you know, for lack of going into serious detail on what he said, people don't do that for obvious reasons because something bad could happen to you. So he refuses to comment on that. And then Ian Garry's wife, Layla, thanked him uh, more or less for defending her honor and being respectful. So, and I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised that that's the way he answered that question.
A feminist.
Yeah, haven't heard that in a while. But the reality is, in our culture, sometimes we don't always respect it, right? I mean, even when I see a MILF shirt, I'm walking around and someone's got a MILF shirt on, like mother I'd like to, and we all know what it means. And it's like, whose mother? My mother? Your mother? Like, whose mother are you talking about? It's totally disrespectful, right? It's comedy, it's funny, but at the end of the day, whose mother? Because if you really start to focus on one person with that statement, you're gonna you're going to run into problems. So I know for sure in the Hispanic culture they don't play that. They don't even get into that. And that's really the right way to deal with that situation. Now, according to Bloody Elbow, Michael Morales has no respect for Islam Makhachev. And when I read that headline, all I think to myself is that Michael Morales is whatever, it doesn't matter what he said, he's getting himself in a news article with Islam Makhachev. And that's what you want to do because you got Carlos Prates, you got Ian Garry, you got Michael Morales. All these guys are on the cusp of fighting for a title. Who's next? We don't know. I mean, you got Ilia Topuria who could jump in there. You got UFC White House coming. So there's a lot that could happen here, and guys are vying to be the next in line for the welterweight title because the division is absolutely loaded. So Michael Morales is making whatever statement to get in there with Islam. Very smart. That's how I see that when I read that headline. So good job, Michael Morales. You know, put yourself in the discussion as you and several others who had big wins all on one card or back-to-back cards, if I remember correctly, are all vying to be next in line. And there's no, we don't know who's next at this point. Now, Joe Rogan is saying the UFC heavyweight division is so shallow that 6-year-old Tank Abbott could come in and do really well against lower ranked opponents and probably finish them. And regardless of how old Tank Abbott is, I mean, obviously that plays into the discussion. Joe Rogan is 100% right when he discusses the heavyweight division is not very deep. I've said this many times. It's just not deep from top to bottom. It's weak, you know? So sometimes newcomers are flying through the division, like a Jailton Almeida, who we'll get into here in a little while, is fighting this Saturday night. They run up the division real quick. You're like, oh my goodness. And then they get into the top 5, and then they slow down and they get beat. But on the way up to the top 5, really top 3, it's not very tough. I mean, you don't really have anyone that sticks out. I mean, look at the welterweight, lightweight, all these other divisions. You get into the top 10, now you're getting into some serious territory. That's why Paddy Pimblett, who I love, struggled with Justin Gaethje. He'll come back and win those fights in the future because he's young. But you get into the top 10, top 5, it gets really difficult. Heavyweight, it's like top 3, and that's it. And that's why guys like Alex Pereira can start calling for their heavyweight title fight. Now you got Tom Aspinall on ice. So, yeah, the division is weak right now. So I'm with Joe Rogan on that. So those are some of the topics that are going down right now in the UFC. We're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we're getting into UFC Vegas 113. Don't go anywhere. The new clothing line is live. Don't invite America to the party. This summer, you got the World Cup of Soccer coming to America. And then no other event bigger than UFC White House. Show up in style. Check out the new clothing line. You can mix and match different colors. It's going down. Again, don't invite America to the party. Click the link in the description of this video, tcmmapodcast.myspreadshop.com, and get yourself some gear right now. Yeah, I mean, the Olympics are days away from the opening ceremony. I can't wait. It's the Winter Olympics. It's not as exciting as the summer, but it's still the Olympics, man. You got Americans, and you see what just happened with, I think, is it Lindsey Vaughn? I might have the name wrong, but torn ACL and still competing. I mean, it's just crazy what some of these people do for their country. Netflix has the Miracle on Ice documentary on right now. You remember that movie? And the documentary is phenomenal. I didn't realize, I mean, I knew how big the miracle on ice was when we beat Russia in a game that we should have never probably won. And that happens in 1980, and then it just changes the trajectory of the future because the 70s were rough for us in America at that time. I was barely alive in 79, but it was rough. And then boom, that happens, and then the 80s just we take off. You know, it really gave people a lot of hype. It just made people feel good about being American. And the 80s were what they were. And when you watch the Miracle on Ice documentary on Netflix, you realize like just how important it was that not only they won that game, but then they had to go win another game in the final, and they were losing going into the third period. I mean, it's just I couldn't imagine. People say that the people that were there for that still are like that was the loudest arena, and not even as big as today's arenas, but the loudest arena they've ever been in, and it will never happen again on that level. Because now we expect to win. We're like the Russians, right? We expect to win uh, in almost everything, you know. So that's just where we're at. So get you one of those shirts, man. Don't invite America to the party. Now, as we dive into UFC Vegas 113, obviously it's in Vegas. You got some big fights on this card, especially in the main event we're going to highlight for, beginning with the bantamweight division, Gene Matsumoto versus Farid Basharat. And this fight is going to be sick. I mean, both of these guys are really, really good, and it's anyone's guess how this thing is going to go. And all we try to do is give you a preview and give you our thoughts on what we think may or may not happen, but it's strictly an opinion. Check it out. In the bantamweight division at UFC Vegas 113, you got a huge fight here between Gene Matsumoto and Farid Basharat. That's because of their records, right? Matsumoto, Brazilian, 17-1. Basharat from Afghanistan, undefeated at 14-0. Basharat 2 inches taller at 5'8". He's 28. Matsumoto 26. So they're both young, but Basharat's entering that prime window. Both guys are getting better every time you see them too. That's the key when you see fighters in their 20s. Basharat, 3-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Matsumoto is more active on the feet with 5.4 significant strikes per minute to 4.1 for Basharat, but Basharat lands more than one takedown per round compared to Matsumoto's 2 takedowns every 3 rounds. So takedown defense will be huge here. Matsumoto just 53%. Not great, but once he gets to the ground, he's fine. Basharat 72%. So look for Basharat to land. Look for Basharat to land 2 to 4 takedowns in this fight. Matsumoto beat Miles Johns by split decision last time out. He did lose to Rob Font by split decision. Even though he had 7 takedowns to none, he got outstruck by 18 significant strikes. And a lot of times the judges look at that more than the takedowns, especially if there's no submission attempts. Now, he did beat Brad Katona, Dan Argueta, but against Brad Katona, it was close. I mean, he's 89 all in significant strikes, and Katona landed 3 takedowns to 1. Very easily could have won that fight. Now, Basharat, on the other hand, again, he's been perfect even in the UFC because he's undefeated at 11-0. He's 5-0 in the UFC, including a win at the Contender Series. 5 of those 6 fights have been by decision, but he did beat Clydeson Rodriguez by arm triangle submission pretty quick in the first round. So this fight to me is going to a decision. I don't see Farid submitting Gene Matsumoto. Matsumoto will have 1 good round, but Farid will have 2 good rounds. And therefore, in my opinion, I think Farid outpaces him to get the victory. But the thing to keep an eye on is Matsumoto usually loses because of significant strikes. And this one, Matsumoto is actually more than likely going to be more active. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out on the ground where both guys got experience. You know, Basharat could find himself in trouble on the ground. It's hard to say. But in terms of what I'm seeing, I believe Basharat, in my opinion, is going to win this fight by winning 2 out of 3 rounds. He'll be in trouble 1 round, right? Whether it be on the feet or on the ground, but he'll win the other 2 with control time to move to 15-0. In my opinion, bantamweight division, UFC Vegas 113. Yeah, so when you consider the guys 14-0 coming in, I can't go against them, but I do recognize that Gene Matsumoto is very, very good. I mean, he's very good, and it's getting tougher for Farid. We're about to find out where he's at in this fight. If he wins this fight, he's just going to get accelerated to the top even quicker because he's starting to get to peak form and that prime age, right? I mean, right now he's 28 years old, so he just entered the prime window. So you're looking at 2 years from now, this guy could be fighting for a bantamweight title. And we need some action in the bantamweight division for sure. We need some more action. There's some good guys, but we need a little more. Now, the next one, this fight actually changed from when we really originally did. It was supposed to be Ryan Spann versus Rizvan Cunha, but now it's Jailton Almeida, a guy that just dominates people on the ground, but sometimes loses because he doesn't do much on the ground. So that's part of this prediction. Let's jump into it right now. In the heavyweight division at UFC Vegas 113, you got Jailton Almeida taking on Rizvan Cunha. Now, Almeida from Brazil, 22-4. This guy is legit. Cunha really good too from Russia, 12-3. And Brazil versus Russia matchups for some reason are always good. Cunha 1 inch taller at 6'4". He's 33. Almeida 34. Almeida 3-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Cunha 4.5 significant strikes per minute. 2.3 for Almeida. So Kuniyev's going to be much more active on the feet, but that doesn't matter because Almeida lands over 2 takedowns per round. So, I mean, that's been his game. And the heavyweights, especially at the lower level, have had a real tough time dealing with him. Now, he did lose to Alexander Volkov by split decision last time out. So 7 takedowns, only 9 significant strikes. That's not going to work. So the takedowns are good, but you got to do something with it. Now, before that, he beat Sergey Spivak by KO. Alexander Romanov, submission. And he lost to Curtis Blades by second round KO in a fight that he was dominating on the ground. But again, 9 takedowns, 1 significant strike. So he's got to get better there. Now, he did beat Derek Lewis, Jair Zeno, Rosenstrike, so he's been up near the top. Kuniev lost to Curtis Blades by split decision. So he fought him well. Beat Hugo Cunha at the Contender Series by KO and Edivan Santos by third round KO. So to go from the Contender Series right to Curtis Blades, which is just crazy, he took him to a split decision. So we got to take this guy serious. I wasn't taking him serious till I saw that. Now, Almeida can land takedowns. He's starting to get better at that. I'm worried about the power and the speed for Kuniev. Now, I know Almeida has speed too when he wants to use it. So he's got to strike a little bit and pick and choose his points. The whole question here is can Kuniev defend submissions? Because there's going to be a point in this fight where he's going to have to. And that's the big question mark. So that's where it all comes down to. I like Almeida to potentially get the submission or at least control this fight on the ground. But look out if Kuniev gets free. Luckily for Almeida, it's just 3 rounds. He's got to win 2 out of 3 on the ground. Never easy with the judges. You got to do something with it, but he's learning. So I'll take Almeida here and Brazil to win this fight, in my opinion. Mostly on the ground, 10, 11 minutes of control time, and we're to 23-4. Heavyweight division, UFC Vegas, 113. Yeah, I'm not going against Brazil, especially with the takedown game. I just got to believe that he's going to start to learn to do something with it. You can't just hold guys on the ground and expect the judges to give you a win. We've seen that over and over again. It does not work, and he's got to do something with it. But I expect him to do just that. Now, as we jump into the co-main, things get real exciting. I mean, flyweight division, not always the most exciting division, but there's a lot of speed and takedowns, and it's a lot like the lightweight minus the power. So you got Amir Albazi, 17-2, and Kyoji Horiguchi, 35-5. I mean, both of these guys are high level. Very tough prediction to make here, but that's why we do it, right? We like to try to figure this stuff out. So let's jump into it. Here's Albazi versus Horiguchi. In the co-main event at UFC Vegas 113, you got Amir Albazi taking on Kyoji Horiguchi, who is a tremendous fighter. So this is not going to be an easy prediction by any means. Albazi from Iraq, 17-2. Horiguchi from Japan, 35-5. I mean, he's got 40 professional MMA fights compared to 19 for Albazi, so he doubles them up there. Both guys 5'5". Horiguchi 35, Albazi 32. Albazi 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Now in the stand-up game, that leans towards Kyoji. 3.6 significant strikes per minute to 2.7 for Albazi. In terms of the takedown game, Horiguchi's very close to 2 takedowns every 3 rounds. Albazi's closer to 1 takedown every 3 rounds or maybe one every other round. So pretty much close across the board, but you got to give the edge to Kyoji in terms of the stats. Now, Abazi 50% takedown defense, or Gucci 54, so that opens the door really for both guys to land takedowns. Albazi lost to Brandon Moreno by an easy unanimous decision from Moreno, 132 to 63 in terms of activity, but Albazi did beat Kai Kara France by decision, split decision. Alessandro Costa, Brazilian, all right, good fighter, 3rd round KO. He submitted Francisco Figueiredo, beat Zhalgas Zumagulov by decision. So the guy has been impressive, 5-1 in the UFC, but he is coming off the loss to Moreno, who, is a guy that's near the top of the division. Origuchi, on the other hand, has been nearly perfect. He only lost to Demetrius Johnson, but that was back in 2015, right? So he fought against Tagir Ulanbekov and submitted him back in November. But before that, he wasn't in the UFC since 2016. It had been 9 years. He went off and did his own thing and now has come back and he's rejuvenated. So this is going to be a tough fight for Albazi. And you look at Tagir Ulanbekov, he's a guy that's was 17-2 coming into that fight, much like Albazi. And, he Kyoji was able to take him down easily by submission. So Albazi's a good fighter, but I'm not going against Origuchi here. This guy seems rejuvenated. He's got a lot of wins, only 5 losses in 40 fights. He's got the experience. I think he's going to edge out Albazi in this one, in my opinion. He may get to submission, but it's going to be tough against Albazi. So likely decision where it's only a 3-round fight. That's my opinion. Flyweight division, co-main event, UFC Vegas 113. Yeah, tough prediction there. Make no mistake about it. I mean, that's a tough prediction. And it's a fight that can go either way, and that's why we watch, right? I mean, 35-5 or 17-2, those are basically equal win percentages. And anything can happen there. And one guy is going to rise to the top. Now, the main event is no joke. I mean, you got Mario Bautista, who's fighting at a high level, and Vinicius Oliveira, who is obviously fighting at a high level as well. Anytime you got a Brazilian in the main event, you got to take you got to take anyone in the main event serious, but Brazil, I very rarely go against, but I do go against them sometimes. And this is one that is a very close fight. Let's jump into it right now. In the bantamweight division, your main event at UFC Vegas 113, you got Mario Bautista taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Obviously a high level matchup. That's why it's the main event. Bautista from America, he comes in at 16-3. Oliveira from Brazil comes in at 23-3. Both guys stand 5'9". Bautista 32, Oliveira 30. So right in the middle of the prime. Oliveira 2-inch reach advantage. Both guys are switch stance fighters. So what does that mean? They're both going to be going back and forth between righty and lefty. There's going to be periods where they're standing opposite stance, periods where they're standing the same stance. So that will be fun and interesting to watch. Both guys over 5 significant strikes per minute, and both guys get like a takedown every other round. So the matchup is pretty even. Now, when you get into takedown defense, that's where it's not even. Oliveira sitting at 80% compared to Bautista at 54. Bautista's coming off the loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, where he gave up 11 takedowns, and that's why his takedown defense has been depleted from upwards of 70% down to 54 in one fight. Now, before that, he was on a huge win streak, roughly 8 fights in a row, rounding out with Patchy Mix, whom he dominated 173 to 122 in significant strikes. So that 8-fight win streak was snapped. Now, Oliveira is currently on a 5-fight win streak, at least in the UFC. He hasn't lost yet. Most recent win was against Kyler Phillips by decision, and Kyler Phillips is a pretty tough guy. He also beat Saeed Nurmagomedov by decision, Ricky Simon decision, and early on he got the KO at the Contender Series, then beat Bernardo Sopai in his UFC debut by KO, and since has run off 3 straight decisions. And normally in close fights like this, I like to go with the Brazilian, but something tells me that Bautista is not going to lose 2 in a row. I believe he's going to bounce back in this fight. It's going to be a very tough fight, and the fact that it's 5 rounds kind of changes things. You know, someone may get off to an early start and then fade down the stretch, and it's really hard to say who that's going to be. Both guys are in their prime. Both guys are pretty much equal across the board except takedown defense, but Bautista just got dominated by a good takedown specialist. That doesn't mean his takedown defense is really 54%. In an average fight, it's closer to 70. So these guys are even across the board. Great fight to watch, tough one to predict, but I like Bautista to edge out Oliveira. I think it's going to go to a decision, and Oliveira's proven he can win decision fights too. So this is no gimme, but I think Bautista edges him out 48-47 across the board, or 3 rounds to 2. In my opinion here, Bautista moves a 17-3 bantamweight division main event at UFC Vegas 113. Yeah, and we didn't go with Brazil. I try to tell y'all. I mean, we like Brazil. Normally go with them in almost every fight, 80-90% of the time. But you got to take the main event real serious. I mean, real serious. That's the one we track throughout the year. Rough year last year, first losing season in the last 7 years. So we got to bounce back. We're 1-1 right now, right? Paddy Pimblett let us down in week 1, but that was a tough fight. We got Volkanovski, and now we're here, sitting at 1-1, trying to get to 2-1 before the break. So we'll see how this plays out, but it should be interesting. So that's what we got. UFC Vegas 113 on deck. And until next time, this your boy Chris Cross. Hope you have a great day, and God bless. As always, peace.